So what is a business broker? I'm going to tell you all about it. We're going to break it down at every level on this video. A business broker, put simply, is just someone who helps people buy and sell small companies. You do that for a living. That's what you do if you're a business broker. Some of them are called M&A advisors. That stands for mergers and acquisition advisor. And that's kind of a fancier way of saying the same thing. A lot of people say that if they work on a little bit larger size deals, they'll say I'm an M&A advisor. And that's becoming a more popular term, kind of because the business broker terms can sometimes have a bad stigma associated with it. We're going to talk into some of the why about that as well. I'm going to explain exactly how this industry works in this show. You're going to learn a lot. If you're experienced in this industry or you've never heard about it before, buckle your seatbelts, let's go. The most easy way for me to explain what a business broker is to compare it to a real estate agent, because most people are extremely familiar with buying a house or selling a house and how real estate agents work. A business broker is basically kind of like a real estate agent, but for private small businesses. But there's some huge differences between being a real estate agent and being a business broker. I'm going to talk to you about those. The biggest one is confidentiality. Like when a real estate agent wants to sell a house, they put signs up on it. They let the whole world know this house right here is for sale right now. As a business broker, that is your worst nightmare. Business owners do not want to know that their business is for sale. They want the whole world to see that this is just business as usual. Nothing weird's going on here. Like, it freaks them out, rightfully so, because if their competitors know they're thinking about selling, their employees know they're thinking about selling, their customers know they're thinking about selling, everyone freaks out, starts losing their minds, and says, do I need to go somewhere else for this service? Am I going to get fired? And so confidentiality is huge. It's exactly the opposite of real estate brokerage. So business brokers never put a sign on anything. You never know which companies they're working on. So they're kind of like a sales agent, but it's kind of a secret agent where they confidentially market the business for sale. They run a process that looks like vaguely describing the company for sale on various online platforms to get business buyers interested in looking at it. But then they screen those buyers, they make them sign non-disclosure agreements before they actually say the name of the companies and the financial details of the companies and the sensitive information that they're trusted with. Another huge difference between business brokers and real estate agents is our inventory is perishable. That just means what we are selling in a business is a living, breathing organism. It's not just a static building that just holds its value and slowly appreciates over time, like most real estate does. A business can be worth millions of dollars today and zero tomorrow if the wrong bad thing happens today. Also, the value of healthy small businesses isn't based on their stuff. So everything else in real estate, the physical, like the square footage, the size of the dirt, the land, the physical properties, that's what makes real estate valuable. Businesses, a lot of times there's no physical stuff. Like I've sold businesses, I've got an e-commerce business under contract right now for several $1 million and it owns nothing except maybe a laptop computer. So what are you actually selling when you're selling that business as a business broker? You're not selling anything physical. You're basically selling hopes and dreams. It's kind of a fun way to put it, but that's really what we're selling. When you are selling a business, you're really selling expectations of future cash flows. And you value it based on primarily the historical cash flows of the company. So that's really what comprises the value of business. Yes, there are asset-heavy companies that have, heavy equipment, trucks, trailers, physical buildings, and things like that. But ones that are really making good money, they're worth way more than even if you add up all that stuff together. And that way more part is called goodwill. So goodwill is the intangible value of a business that's above its physical assets. And a business broker has to be a master at determining goodwill value of a business, because anybody can kind of add up the stuff. And what is this stuff worth if you're just to sell all the stuff on eBay, Craigslist, whatever. But you have to know what is the intangible part worth. And a lot of that is derived from understanding the financials of the business, the cash flows, and the income basis. And you use an income approach to value and use market comps to determine the value of the company. The other thing different about business brokerage versus real estate is our deals are very complicated compared to real estate. So there are so many moving pieces. You've got to think about all kinds of things you don't have to think about with real estate. And so there's just really a much higher learning curve to learning to become a business broker and I don't want to insult you real estate people because I know your world is complex too. And I know you have lots of stuff you have to learn. But I'm telling you, we have to learn that physical stuff and the income approach stuff, but we also have to learn about the leadership team of the company. We have to learn about things, the people, the processes. All these things add up to value. The buyer doesn't just look at the historical financials. They look at the leadership team that's in place. They look at the systems. They look at all the intangibles. They look at the email list, the social media presence, the websites. Those all add up to valuable assets of this company. And that's stuff that's hard to value. The three big differences between real estate and business brokerage and what we sell is A, we have to be confidential. B, our inventory is highly perishable and fluctuates in value. And C, it's infinitely complex. There's thousands of different business models. There's thousands of different variables that just don't exist in real estate that all come into play when you're trying to broker a business deal. It's just a very complex transaction. I started and sold a couple of companies before I even knew business brokers were a thing. I didn't even know they existed. I started meeting them and they go by different names. Sometimes they call themselves a business broker. Sometimes they call themselves an M&A advisor. And sometimes you might hear the term investment banker. Investment bankers are typically middle market or the very large deals, public companies and very large, 9-figure, 10-figure transactions are typically the realm of the investment banker, whereas the 6 and 7 and 8-figure transactions are typically the realm of the business broker and the M&A advisor. And we're really going to be breaking down the business broker and M&A advisor vocabulary in that industry in this video. One of my favorite things about being a business broker is I'm most people's only business broker that they know. Most people don't even know a single one. When you meet a business broker, it's kind of like you just met a leprechaun. You've never seen one before, and you get to stick in people's memory. And when that person inevitably needs to sell a business or buy a business, or their parents do, or their friend does, because everybody either owns a small business or one of their good friends owns a small business, and you can become their go-to business broker, the only one they know really easily. And compare that to real estate. I know probably 50 real estate agents that are good friends of mine. And if I want to go sell my house, I'm going to make 49 of them pissed off at me, right? Because I can only use one of them and I can't use the other 49 for that transaction. But if you're a business broker, you're just kind of a rare bird and you can be a lot of people's go-to. They're only one that they know. That's a really fun part about this. I'm going to break down the numbers on why that is. Let's go back to real estate. There's 85 million single-family homes in the United States of America. And how many real estate agents are there? There's 3 million or so licensed real estate agents in the United States. Not all of them are full-time and active. So I'd rather use the NAR number, which is the actual realtor, the trademarked term, which is 1.6 million realtors exist in the United States versus 85 million homes that could be sold. And so that means for every 53 homes, there's a realtor. Now let's talk about the numbers on businesses. If you just Google how many businesses are in the United States, you'll probably see a number that's 34, 35 million businesses are in the United States. That number is highly deceiving. The majority of those are just single member entities that are not really sellable businesses. In fact, only about 6 million of those 35 have employees at all. So when we're talking about a business broker's potential inventory, we're really just talking about that, not the 35 million, we're really talking about the 6 million, but I want to break it down even further because there's a whole lot of those that have 0 to 5 employees, and that's really like self-employed with some style. Like those ones with 0 to 5 are super hard to sell. It's usually wrapped around the owner and they have some help with a couple of employees, but it's super hard to transfer that to a buyer. So out of all the businesses in the United States, the 35 million, only 3.3 million have 5 or more employees. Now let's compare that to the number of business brokers in the United States. It's impossible to know exactly how many business brokers there are, but all the sources I see say there's less than 10,000 total business brokers in the United States. Compare that to real estate agents. Just in the state of Texas, where I am, we have over 150,000 real estate agents just in Texas. Nationally, like I said, there's millions of them. Business brokers, if we're at under 10,000 nationally, and then we look at who's the biggest trade organization in business brokerage, who's the equivalent of the NAR, that would be the IBBA, the International Business Brokers Association. They have members all over the world, but most of the members are in the United States. I just returned from their annual conference. We had 1,700 attendees. It was our biggest one ever. But the entire membership of the IBBA is just over 3,000 members at this time. So I would say out of the 10,000 or so business brokers, there's probably about 3,000. I'd say the IBBA members are the most serious, full-time, committed to the profession brokers out there. And so when you compare that to 3.3 million businesses that have 5 or more employees and 3,000 or so serious full-time professional business brokers, that means for every business broker, there's 1,100 businesses with 5 or more employees that's going to need to sell. 73% are going to need to sell in the next 10 years. These numbers are staggering, and why I think business brokerage is one of the biggest opportunities in this country. And why people aren't flooding into this space is because it's really hard and difficult to break into, and we'll break into some of the reasons why. But again, 53 houses for every real estate agent, or 1,100 good-sized small businesses for every business broker. Which side of the equation do you want to be on? You know, I would rather be a business broker, and I'd rather have no competition, be all my friends' only business broker, and have 1,100 pieces of inventory instead of 53 pieces of inventory. And to boot, we usually get paid more than selling a house does. So it's just ripe for opportunity, but yet people aren't flocking to this space, and it's extremely difficult to break into. And why is that? We're going to break that down. So right now, most of these small businesses and the ones that business brokers want to sell are owned by baby boomers. That's changing every day because they're retiring by the tens of thousands every week. That's what some people call the silver tsunami. This is this wave of sellers, the basketball going through the fire hose that's going on in this market. Yes, that is true. That is happening. But at the same time, we're having a tsunami of buyers flood into this market as well. So I think it is a perfect time to get into this industry because there's social media influencers out there that are teaching, quit your job, buy a boring business at scale. Millions of people are hearing this message. This message is infiltrating every college campus in America. It started at Harvard and Stanford. They started teaching entrepreneurship through acquisition in their MBA programs, and it's becoming one of their fastest growing business programs they're teaching. Instead of going to Wall Street, these kids are graduating Harvard and Stanford and going straight into searching to buy a small business and to buy that dream. And every business school around the country is copying that at the graduate level and the undergraduate level. Everybody's teaching it. There is a huge wave of interest. Everybody wants to get on this action right now. And so you have that basketball in the garden hose of the baby boomer sellers colliding with this influx of the millennials and the Gen Zs and, you know, coming in and buying this dream. And really, like, the younger buyers, a lot of them are just motivated by freedom. Like, they just want to have freedom and control of their life. And they've been waking up in the recent probably 10-year period of like, man, this just climb the corporate ladder thing isn't all that it's cracked up to be. And job security doesn't really exist anymore. And I would rather just take control of my own destiny. And a great way to do that is just owning a small business. And so people are learning, how do you just go buy a business from this wave of retiring business owners? And they're finding people that are teaching that content. They're buying courses, they're buying information, but ultimately they're trying to buy businesses. And business brokers get to be right there, making that generational handoff. And what I really love about being a business broker is it's not really about the money to me. It's about you get to be part of changing people's lives. So the reason people buy and sell businesses is generally a personal reason. So that seller, this is their baby, this is their life's work, and they're ready to finally reinvent themselves, go on a new adventure, turn a chapter. Maybe it's retirement. Maybe it's they just want to do something else. I sell a lot of businesses, not for the 70-year-old retiree. I sell them for a lot of 50-year-olds too. Maybe they just became empty nesters for the first time, and their business that they've been doing, maybe it's an auto repair shop. It put their kids through college. It got them out of the house, and they've been doing it for 25 years, since they were 25 to 50. And now they're thinking, if I'm ever going to do anything else, now's the time. Because my kids are out of school, and do I want to keep turning wrenches another 20 years? You know, if I'm ever going to reinvent myself, it's now. So we sell some of those businesses too. So it's not just all the silver hair retirees. Like we sell midstream kind of midlife crisis deals all the time. That's a very popular one. But either way, the buyer or the seller, they're selling because they want to change their life. They're buying because they want to change their life. They're here to turn a new chapter. And when you're the business broker, you get to be at this magical moment where these two lives intersect and go a completely new direction on the other side of this deal. And you get to help facilitate their transaction. And it's pretty magical. The downside is it's also very stressful and emotional. And part of your job as a business broker is just to be like a therapist and a counselor to these people, because their whole life is being disrupted right now. A lot of times it's ripping apart their identity. Everything they've known has been associated with their career or their business they own, and everything's up in the air and changing right now. Sometimes their spouses are freaking out. Everybody's freaking out. They only get one shot at this. The buyer's putting their life savings into it. The seller's retirement hinges on it. It's a high stakes game. And you've got to be that calm in the storm, helping them navigate those choppy waters so that they can get to the smooth sailing they desire for the next chapter of their life. So I've broken down the numbers of why there's so much opportunity out here. I mean, there are more deals to do than there are brokers to do them, by far. I mean, the opportunity is phenomenal. So why isn't everyone and their dog becoming a business broker right now? Why is this industry so hard to break into? I want to share a little bit about that. The first reason it's hard to break into business brokerage is because most business brokers are a full commission salesperson. So in other words, they don't make any money until a deal closes. And these deals sometimes take a year or more to close. But when you start, you don't even have a deal yet. So you often have to leave what you're doing, go through an education process where you have to learn about business valuation. I encourage you to join the IBBA, the big trade group that I was talking about, because they have great educational paths to take there. I went through all their courses, got all their certifications, and that really helped me in the beginning of my journey. But that takes a little time, right? So you got to invest months and money. So you're spending tens of thousands of dollars educating yourself on how to do business deals, how to value companies, how to walk people through this. And then you've got to business develop. You got to get deals in the door. And then by the time you get your first big commission check, it's often 18 months or longer from when you start. And so that pretty much rules out like 99% of the potential people that want to be a business broker, because most people don't go around with 18 months of liquidity in the bank to just go start a whole new career. And it's just too high risk because you don't even know if you're going to make it. Most people don't. Most people that leave what they were doing, they become a business broker, end up failing and churning and washing out. And it's really sad. And sometimes they lose a year or two of savings while they go on that adventure that never pans out into the career that they hoped it would be. So that financial moat is what keeps most people out of business broker. That's one of the biggest reasons it's hard to break into this industry. There's a lot of other reasons this is hard, and I'm going to keep dragging you through the glass here for a minute because I want to be real with you. I don't want to sugarcoat it. I want to be real with you. I've done this for 10 years. I've been through the ups and downs, and I've felt it. I've felt how hard this is. And I'm going to be honest with you about it. There's some real difficult things about being a business broker. Another one is even once you are up and going and you have a pipeline, cash flow is extremely lumpy. So my first about 7 years or so as a practitioner in this space, on average, I looked back, I tracked my financials monthly. On average, I lost money about 9 months out of the year, and I made money 2 to 3 months out of the year. But overall, I would typically make money. But you had to be good at budgeting because your cash flow statement ends up looking like an EKG. It's like beep, 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 and it's just, you get a hit and then you got to survive to the next hit. And what ends up happening is a lot of brokers that aren't good at, really squirreling away money for those surviving between those closings end up washing out because they just can't handle being flush with cash and wanting to take your wife on a big vacation and remodel the house because you just got a big check, to then surviving 6 months till your next closing. And that's often what you have to do here, is you have to be really good at managing your personal finances and maintaining a huge liquidity level. And I've had several years in my young career where I had the make or break deal, where I had lost money all year long, or I was just barely treading water, and we would have a couple of them stacked up because a lot of people want to close right at the new year. And guess when the lawyers want to make the all hands call and threaten the deal is Christmas Eve. And so I've been on the phone on Christmas Eve away from my little babies, away from my kid, trying to save the deal that's going to save my company, that's going to save my year on financials. And that is no fun. And that's probably why I don't have much hair left, is I've been through that so many times. And that's what you're signing up for when you're a business broker. You don't just get to work a 9 to 5 here. This is 24/7 sometimes. When you've got to talk a seller off the ledge, talk a buyer off the ledge that's getting cold feet, or put on your Superman cape and save the deal, that happens at night. That happens on the weekends. Sometimes you got to go show the company, you got to facilitate a meeting, but it's after hours because they're trying to keep it secret. Remember I said confidentiality was important. So when you go tour businesses, you're doing that at night. You're sneaking around like a secret agent. You're doing inventory counts sometimes all night, right before closing on a retail store. You might be, if you're selling a liquor store, you're in there counting inventory with your buyer. 11 o'clock at night before the deal closes. It's fun, but it's also stressful and it's also high stakes, and it will churn you out and burn you out. If you can't take good care of your mental health and your physical health and your personal finances, this business can chew you up and spit you out. It is extremely stressful. And then probably one of the other big reasons besides the financial hurdles, the stress, the cash flow hurdles, all that is just the deal flow problem. So what ends up happening a lot of times is you work really hard to business develop. So basically you're getting referrals, you're doing marketing, you're putting yourself out there to try to become this trusted person for the seller to use to sell their business. And you end up, once you get 3, 4, 5, 6 deals in the pipeline, it starts to consume all of your time, just working on the deals, negotiating the deals, meeting with all the buyers, working with all the banks and lawyers and landlords and all the things you have to solve to get the deal to the finish line. And sometimes these deals come in waves where you'll close 3 or 4 at a time. And then all of a sudden you look back and you're like, oh no, I don't have any more deals. I got so busy, I forgot to market and I forgot to keep business developing. And so one of the real skills you have to have as a broker is, even when the world's on fire and you're saving the deals and you're working all these high stakes transactions, you can never stop business development. You can never stop marketing. And I think one of the big reasons people wash out is because they're just not good at putting themselves out there as marketers. I think I've been successful because I live very publicly. So I've got a big social media following. I've got a huge referral source. People know me, and like that creates this evergreen virtuous cycle of referrals and a deal engine. And that kept me busy with new deals. And but I'm putting myself out there all the time. I see other people that are honestly as good or better than I am at the technical part of this job. Like, they're masters of finance, they're masters of negotiation. They're very good brokers, but they're just not very good marketers, and they struggle. They hit that wall of, they close deals and they're like, oh crap, I have no more deals, and they're uncomfortable and it's out of their comfort zone. So you have to have that marketing mindset of always be business developing to make it in this world. And a lot of people just don't have that. And that's really another reason most people don't make it in this space, is because the skills to be a great business broker are so different. Like, you have to be a financial wizard in some sense. You have to be able to talk at a high level with really smart MBAs and CPAs and attorneys about balance sheets and profit and loss statements and valuations and all the nuance of that. But you also have to relate to the self-made business owner that can't spell EBITDA and doesn't know any of this vocabulary and stuff. You have to be, reasonably relatable to the self-made business owner. And then you have to be a salesman. You have to be a nerd. It's like, and people that are good at business valuation and finance, or the technical part of this, are typically not very great at the people side of this. And so it's kind of a rare bird that has really good people skills, where you're able to be persuasive and just build rapport and get people to trust you. When you're working a deal, you're basically building a trust reservoir that you have to tap at some point when things get hard. And if you're not a good people person of building that relationship along the way, and you're leaning too hard on your Excel spreadsheet skills, your deals are going to fall apart because you don't know how to lead people. You don't know how to relate to people. And so a successful business broker traditionally has both sides. They're the nerd, and they're the fun people person that's really relatable and persuasive. And most people just are one or the other. And if you don't have both, it's really hard to make it in this world. I'm going to talk in a little bit about how we're trying to solve that at my company with a division of labor. We'll get to that in a little bit. So I would be remiss if I didn't address the elephant in the room that business brokers sometimes have a very bad reputation. Sometimes we're seen as used car salesmen, sleazy hawkers of terrible businesses at terrible asking prices with terrible processes. And sometimes, honestly, it's well earned. Quite frankly, I broke into this business because I was a frustrated buyer originally. Over 10 years ago, I was trying to buy a business and I was striking out left and right. I could not find a good deal. I could not get anyone to call me back. It was bait and switch tactics. The business brokers I first encountered did not impress me, and I snapped and someone needs to do a better job at this. And that's ultimately why I got into this industry in the first place, was I was just a frustrated buyer. What I found out is there are a lot of really great professionals that do world-class work. They're just doing God's work in this space, but there are no barriers to entry in this space. Like, how do you become a business broker is quite simple. You just say, I'm a business broker. Voila, you are a business broker. Like, that's all it takes. There's no requirement to join the IBBA. There's no requirement to get professional credentials or even know what you're doing at all. And so a lot of people enter this space kind of haphazardly as it's just kind of an experiment to see if they can make it through that initial phase. But they didn't go with the right setup for success. Maybe they were undercapitalized. Maybe they were just delusional thinking they could do this, but they enter this space. And it's kind of like the 80-20 rule is in effect. So I would say there's 20% of business brokers out there that are true professionals that are doing most of the volume, that are just killing it, doing great work for their clients. But there's 80% that I think are giving the industry a bad name. They're not taking this career seriously. And I don't want you to be part of that 80%. I want you to be, if you join this, whether or not you work with us or anyone else, like, be part of the 20% and take this career seriously. Dedicate yourself to best practices and education and doing good work. But I want to quickly tell you the mistakes I see those 80% of what I would call bad brokers do that give the whole industry a bad name, just so you can avoid that and hopefully dispel some myths along the way. The most common mistake I think the young business broker that doesn't know what they're doing yet makes is they take on any listing. Because, hey, when you start with zero, anything's better than zero, right? And so the first person that says, I want to sell my business, you're like, great, let's sign you up. But often it's a thing you should never have taken on in the first place. So the biggest advice I tell new brokers is to make sure you have a minimum size standard that you stick to, that you require clean books, a good history of earnings, and a realistic asking price. If you can't get those things, walk away. It's better to have zero deals than to have an overpriced deal with bad books, with a big ego seller that thinks he can push you around and tell you what he wants for the business, regardless of what it's worth, and then bully you into making that the asking price on the deal. You have to be stronger than that. Like, you have to be stronger than that, guys and gals. It's very common for the young business broker, someone will come to them with a small business that wants to sell. You'll analyze it. You'll say, I think this business could sell for maybe $500,000. I think we should go with a $500,000 asking price. And they go, whoa, I'm not taking less than $1 million. And that's before I pay you. We need to price this at least 1.1 million or else I'm out. And you're like, dang it. I guess. So what some people do is they reluctantly get bullied into that. But I also think there's some brokers that just make it their MO and they actually build a career out of saying, okay, I'll ask 1.1. We'll let Mr. Market tell us what it's worth. And their whole plan is to overpromise and underdeliver. So they'll put it on the market for 1.1, but as long as they've got an exclusive engagement agreement where the seller can't get out of it, you've locked them into, if this thing sells in the next year or two or three, you're going to get paid. Then you don't really care if you overprice it, because at 6 months from now, you'll wear down seller Bob and you'll call Bob and be like, Bob, I wanted to get you that 1.1, but man, I'm only getting offers at 500 here. You ready to sell yet? Let's lower the price. And sometimes Bob will say yes, sometimes Bob will say no. But I think there's a lot of unscrupulous brokers that get in and they're desperate for commissions. to the point of where they won't give that honest feedback. I think the best brokers stand firm on that valuation. They know what this thing's going to trade at. There's a pretty narrow band, especially on the SBA size deals. We know the math. We know what's going to fly, what's not going to fly. And don't let the seller push you around. Don't just get the listing for the sake of getting the listings. But I think those are the worst brokers. Is like they just get as many listings as possible. They think it's just a numbers game. They throw spaghetti at the wall. They think some will sell, some won't. So what? It's a numbers game. Just go get a whole bunch of listings. And those are the absolute worst ones. And so if you join this industry, please do not follow that playbook. There are some major players out there that is their playbook. They carpet bomb mailers of like, everybody that owns a business hears from that company. Everybody says, you got to go with us. We sell all these businesses. They make all these big promises, and they'll overpromise and they'll overvalue, but then they'll burn out these sellers. And what typically happens is that business doesn't sell, or it sells for much less than the expectation. And then the seller is now disillusioned on the whole industry. They think brokers are a bunch of crooks. They don't know what they're doing. They didn't work for it. And they get overloaded with bad listings. And I think it's better to have 5 or 10 deals that you're stewarding that are all priced right, clean, good deals than it is to have 30 crappy ones that you're hoping 5 or 10 sell. Like, just get 5 or 10 and sell them all. There's also, I think, a few bad firms out there that are just kind of predatory in nature. If you ever see ones that are doing like hotel seminars, wearing fancy suits, I'm not going to name names because they're very litigious. But like there's some ones out there that like their best salespeople are their sell the dream of selling your business up front people. And their worst salespeople are the actual closers that are trying to close the deal. And their whole model is they get a business owner to believe that their business is the most special business that's ever existed. And you're going to get this huge premium price from our private equity buyers. But in order to do that, we have to build this really good book and this beautiful package on your business. And that only costs $50,000 up front. And then we're going to sell your business for this eye-watering, huge multiple. And I believe there's some predatory firms out there that do mass marketing that's their whole MO. Is like they don't really care if it sells or not because they make this huge chunk of upfront money whether or not it sells. And so some sell, and so they get to hang that skin on the wall and be like, yeah, look at us, we sold that big business, because sometimes it works. But more often than not, they overpromise, underdeliver, they take a big upfront fee, sell off into the sunset. My firm's come behind many times where we get a very disillusioned seller that bought into that. They wasted $50,000 on a building this thing with all this hype, but they didn't get the deal done. And then we had to come in behind them and say like, yeah, that's because it's drastically mispriced, and they were not being honest with you. And here's all the data. Here's how it actually works. And we'll come up, and if you're ready to like get this done, we'll do this the right way. I'll be honest with you up front, and I won't charge you that upfront fee. We'll just get paid on the back. Let's get this done. And so I've come clean up behind those firms a lot of times. And so I think there's kind of like large predatory firms, and I also think there's just kind of desperate people that are doing the spaghetti at the wall thing, firms that gives the business brokers a bad name. And I also think that there's a decent percentage of business brokers that are just kind of hobbyists. And I think the hobbyists do not give us a good name either. So sometimes those take the form of like, maybe it's a trusted CPA of a seller. I don't want to pick on CPAs. You're easy to pick on CPAs, but I've just seen this, so I'm just going to use this as an example. I love you, CPAs. But maybe you've had this client for a long time. I came along with our firm and sold their business. You saw at closing us get a $150,000 check or something, and you thought to yourself, holy cow, that's more than I made last year. He got that in one deal. That can't be that hard. I'm about to retire next year. I could just do 1 or 2 of these a year, and that'll give me my walking around golfing money and stuff like that. And there's people that just kind of stumble into this because they have they've been a lawyer, they've been a CPA, they've been a consultant, so they can talk the talk, they can present themselves well, and they think this is just what I'm going to dabble in while I golf and while I do other stuff. Like, those people just aren't high performance, and this is hard work, people. Like, you are signing up for a hard job when you decide to be a broker, if you're going to be a good one. If you're going to do your clients justice, it's full time. It's a tough job, and you got to be committed to it. And I think there's like the hobbyist, 1 foot in, 1 foot out dabblers that are out there just trying to do a couple deals, but they're not up to speed on all the latest and greatest changes to the SBA program. They're not professionally educated on what's going on in the deal space. They don't have a big buyer network. They're just kind of hoping they can put it online and get lucky and the right buyer swims in, but they can't proactively go to their large network and get it done and like make it happen because they're kind of at the sunset of their career. And so don't dabble, don't throw spaghetti at the wall, don't join a predatory firm that takes big upfront fees and doesn't deliver on your promises. If you avoid those 3 traps and go, any of these directions I told you, you're going to be on the right side of that power curve. You're going to be in that 20% that gives our industry a great name, that does good work for people, and ultimately you make way more money doing the right thing and doing high quality work. That's what I want to encourage you to do. Okay, so I covered some of the ways this is really hard, this is really difficult, but I also want to talk about what are the attributes, the skills, the backgrounds that make a good business broker. Because some of you are going to be very inclined to this naturally, and I've hired and fired and trained a bunch of business brokers over the year. I've noticed patterns, and I'm part of the IBBA and some best practices groups, and we all are kind of observing the same patterns of who has the best background, who's the most naturally inclined to succeed in this space. And I just want to share some of those with you, and maybe this will help you decide if this is for you or not. So I am highly biased because I'm an entrepreneur background that became a business broker. So I started a couple of companies, I sold a couple companies before I became a broker, but I think business owners are the best business brokers. I think someone that's owned a business, that's been responsible for a profit and loss statement and payroll and has felt the pressure of business ownership, I think they become the best business brokers because they've just walked a mile in your client's shoes. You can relate to them like nobody else can. Entrepreneurs are just kind of different. Like they're just kind of different kind of people. They all have a little bit of a screw loose. They are just high risk tolerance, cowboy type of people that are willing to bet on themselves. And your clients are all entrepreneurs. Your sellers all are, but your buyers are all wantrepreneurs if they're not already entrepreneurs. Like they all want to be entrepreneurs. And so when you have that real world experience of business ownership, I think that translates extremely well into being a business broker. So if you've owned the types of businesses you're trying to help people sell, that gives you instant credibility with your buyers and your sellers. I also think some good brokers come out of the financial and legal industries and the sales and marketing industries, because those are all great skills to have. But again, I feel like entrepreneur is the superior skill set because I just feel like it's easier to teach an entrepreneur basic finance than it is to take a real skilled financial wizard and teach them how an entrepreneur thinks and feels, because that's stuff that's just hard to teach. But if you do come from a financial, a legal, a consulting, or consultative sales background, that will definitely help you. Those are all things you can use to your advantage as a business broker. I think B2B consultative sales is a huge plus in your skill set column. So if you ever sold something that's high ticket, it's expensive and it takes a long time to close the deal, like that's going to translate into being a successful business broker, because that means you're familiar with the building a deep relationship, building rapport, and following a process-oriented, long-term, high-trust, white-glove service sale. Like if you've done that in other industries, that's kind of what you got to do when you sell a business. And so that B2B sales, long sales cycle sales experience very much translates. If you're a CPA or you've been a business evaluator, like that technical knowledge is extremely useful. You're going to come across extremely credible when you tell business owners what their business is worth and why. And that's really its own subset of the business broker skill set. I think that's maybe the master skill of a business broker is in one of your first couple of meetings with a potential seller prospect, you're going to have to inevitably tell them their business isn't worth as much as they think it is, because about 99% of business owners overinflate in their heads what their business is worth, and you have to bring them down to reality. And that's really its own art form that you have to master. So you have to technically explain why that is, but in a way that's friendly, credible, and it's basically like being able to call someone's baby ugly and they still like you afterwards and still are going to let you babysit their baby afterwards, or whatever the analogy would be there. But yeah, can you pop that valuation bubble in a way that they still like you, trust you, and want to work with you? That's a huge art form that you have to get great at as a broker. Some good brokers do come from a legal background, but I think it's almost a double-edged sword to where sometimes I think it can hurt you more than help you. And that's just because lawyers are used to advocating for their client. So if you've been a lawyer, especially a transaction lawyer, you're just wired to advocate. That's what you're supposed to do. That's the whole point of law, is you're supposed to be advocating for your client. And when you're working for the seller, you're going to be my way or the highway way too much when you're talking to the buyer and the other side of the table. And that's what I think is the downside, the negative side of lawyers. The plus side is you know how stuff works. You've done deals. You've got experience that's really relevant to the space. But lawyers have a hard time being pragmatic and being solutions oriented and just finding a way to get it done that's different and being creative. They see things in black and white. And I think the best deal makers are creative, they're pragmatic, and they say, hey, there's 10 different ways to do this deal. We'll figure it out, but you lead with relationship first, and then you get the paperwork next. But I think if you lead too hard with the paperwork and try to force that into the relationship, you'll strain and break the relationship. And this is really a relationship sale. And that goes back to kind of the comparison to real estate that makes it totally different than real estate. Is I feel like real estate's more of a contract-driven process, whereas business brokerage is a more of a relationship-driven process. Unlike real estate, you usually never meet the buyer and seller. They're kept apart. In a business broker deal, they have to come together. They have to meet in advance of the deal. They have to know each other, like each other, trust each other. They have to want to work together for a mutually beneficial season of both of their lives, because these require a blended transitional period where the seller helps train the buyer and hand off the business. And if you don't click and you don't mesh, you should not do the deal. And so managing relationships is huge here. And I think if you get the relationship right and the chemistry right, and you keep the good vibes going on the deal, then you can overcome a lot of the technical problems that pop up from the eggheads and the nerds and the lawyers and the landlords and all that. You can overcome that if you've got strong relationship management skills. So I bet if you're thinking about getting into this industry, one of the top questions on your mind is, how much do business brokers make? Like, is there a pot of gold at the end of this rainbow? If you're able to overcome that moat, the financial hurdle of breaking into this space, you're able to obtain deal flow, you're able to get the skills you need to walk these buyers and sellers through this emotional journey and close the deal, do you make some good money at the end of it? And yes, you do. Like, good brokers make good money, but it's highly, highly irregular and variable. And like I said, it reads like an EKG. One year will be great, the next year will be feast or famine, and it just comes in waves, and that's how it happens. But just to set general expectations, I know tons of business brokers that are open books with me. We share what we make, and we're some of the top performers in the industry. And then we have business brokers that work for our firms, and we know what they make. They have great sample sets here of real world experience. And I'll tell you, a kind of mid-career broker that's doing at least a few deals a year, they're typically making six figures. Like 100,000 to 500,000 is probably the most common range, and where like a good year will be on the high side of that, a bad year will be on the low side of that. A terrible year can be zero. You can go blank. You can get blanked some years, even mid-career. But yeah, like I'd say multiple hundreds of thousands is typically where you land if you've got a flowing pipeline. That's kind of where you land. I know a couple of brokers, I can count them on my hand, that are making seven figures a year. So there's a couple that I'm thinking of that almost consistently make $1 million, and on a really great year will make $2 million of take home. And those are like on the award stage, top performers, deal maker of the year people at the IBBA conference. Like some of those are seven figure earners, but I'd say your typical like median business broker is going to be making low six figures. and it's going to be all over the place on the earnings. And so that's how I would sum it up, is like when you're first starting out, plan on zero. Once you get a flowing pipeline, you should be able to make at least 100K, 100 to 500, highly fluctuating. And then if you become really dedicated to your craft and really master deal flow, really master the speed and automation, and really knock it out of the park, you can climb into the high 6 figures to low 7 figures. And that typically seems to be where the highest performers top out. And the only way to grow from there is to up level into investment banking, into the Wall Street world, into the big, billion-dollar deals and stuff like that. But I don't know how all that works because I've never done that. So we'll save that for another video with someone else. Now, if you're going to join the business brokerage industry, you're going to have 3 big decisions to make pretty early in your career that are going to set you on different paths. I'm going to talk through them here with you now. First off is, do you want to be an industry specialist or do you want to be a generalist? An industry specialist is just someone that kind of camps out in an industry. So you'll be known as like, I'm the laundromat guy, I'm the restaurant guy, I'm the auto repair guy, I'm the tow truck business guy, whatever. There's a niche for everything. There's thousands of different niches. So you can niche in to an industry and try to content market, try to niche in with their industry trade groups and become like an expert. Your SEO strategy, your social media strategy, everything geared towards that industry, and build a reliable list of repeat buyers and a deep knowledge pool of expertise in that particular industry, and really specialize. I really think that the industry is moving more the specialization direction, and that can be a great way to do it. I have a friend named Rebecca Davis that all she sells is veterinary clinics, and she kills it. She sells them all over the country. Everybody knows she's the one to go to. And if you can become that top 1 or 2 in a niche, you can set yourself up for a very nice lifestyle. But it does have some disadvantages. One of those disadvantages is, for me, I'm kind of like an ADD entrepreneur, and I know myself well enough that I know that I get bored doing the same thing over and over again. And that's part of the reason I left a career in insurance. So I was an insurance salesman for a while. And if you know anything about insurance, it's like the same year just repeats over and over again. It drove me crazy. When I found business brokerage and I chose to become a generalist, I got to explore hundreds of different types of business models, and every deal I'm learning something totally new, and it keeps me stimulated and it allows me to kind of scratch that entrepreneurial ADD, shiny object chasing itch that I have without having a career hop. I feel like for the first time in my life, I can do something for 10 years straight without having to do a whole new career to get stimulated. And so for me, it's just fun. It's more fun to be a generalist. It also, I think, makes you more opportunistic. Like sometimes if you're a specialist, like think about COVID. Some industries got annihilated. Like they were just deleted off the planet for a few years. If you were an industry specialist at wedding venues and all wedding venues were shut down, and like, how are you going to sell them? What are you going to do? And so being a generalist gives you a lot of flexibility to be opportunistic and go in different directions. But yeah, it has disadvantages too. So I think you just have to know yourself. If you like the repeatable, consistent, like wash, rinse, repeat process and really niching in, dialing in, like being a specialist may be for you. If you're more like me, if you like the wide world of adventure, of the generalist world, do that, but do whatever makes you happy. But you got to decide, am I going to niche in or am I going to be generalist? The next big decision you have to make is, do you want to go the franchise brokerage route or the independent brokerage route? And this is a personal decision. There isn't a right or wrong answer here. So some of the biggest business brokers in the world are a franchise model. I'm talking about Transworld, VR, Sunbelt, Murphy. There's a bunch of them, but they sell franchises, basically business brokerages in a box to anyone that meets their qualifications. And then you can become knighted that now you're a Transworld business broker or a VR business broker, whichever one you pick. They all have some nuanced differences between them, but they're all kind of similar. In general, you're assigned a market area that you kind of own the geography of. And it's kind of like the real estate model. Like if you opened up a Century 21 or Keller Williams or something like that, it's a well-known brand, and you kind of follow their training, follow their pattern, and you have to share some of the take with the franchisor. So they do take a royalty off the top. So you have to pay a franchise fee. You have to pay royalties. When I was first starting, I really thought about getting a franchise because I was worried about, I was young at the time. I had more hair. It wasn't gray yet. And yeah, I was just worried that I was going to be perceived as this young guy who didn't know what he was doing. And I thought I could lean on a franchise to say, I'm part of this big group and we sell all these businesses. And I thought that would give me more credibility. Ultimately, I decided not to do a franchise. And mainly for me, I just looked at the brands and the systems. And I'm kind of a branding guy and a systems guy and a technology guy. And I didn't really like their systems that much. And I was like, I know I'm going to be building my own CRMs and my own automation systems off to the side. I'm not really going to utilize what they're doing because I just have my own way I like to do things. And then I just realized I'm kind of an entrepreneur by heart where I like to do things my own way. I like to reinvent the wheel and do everything the hard way and break stuff and try new stuff. And I just know like I'm not really wired to be a franchise guy. So I just, and ultimately decided to go the independent route. And I leaned on the IBBA and other professional trade groups and credentials to get me that like credibility factor versus leaning on the franchise. So I think there are ways to solve the credibility problem through education and association with independents if you want to go that way. But the franchise option can be a good option if you want to just buy into a system and just follow the bouncing ball. They have proven stuff that works. The only thing today I think that's really turning me off to franchises, I just feel like the world's changing to where the geographic model isn't what I would want to be doing. They'll still let you do deals wherever, I think, but like they have some rules around geography. When leads come in, like through their corporate stuff, they assign them geographically. But I'm like, how do you do that if the owner's in Texas, then it's a Delaware corporation and all their employees are in California and Singapore and like companies are getting more and more distributed and more online based and less physical location based. And so I think that like geographic approach is getting dated, if you will. And so no offense to you if you're a franchise. I know it still works. A lot of you are extremely successful, happy for you. But I just see like the world is moving to be more and more online and less geography based. And then for me personally, I was like, I just know myself. Again, just like the generalist decision, I was like, I'm not really the systems guy for the franchise. I got to do my own thing. So that's why I chose generalist, but there's no right or wrong answer. The third decision you have to make is, do you want to be a business broker or do you want to own a business brokerage? Two different things, okay? So this is a totally different mindset. One is, do you want to be a deal person that's just like going out, doing deals, making the money, has minimal people reporting to you, you have total autonomy and freedom, you can work with who you want, whatever deals you want, and you're just like the getting closings, getting big checks, and being that high performer? Or do you want to like, it's almost like, do you want to play on the football field or do you want to coach the team? That's kind of the difference between being a broker and being a brokerage owner. If you really want to be a brokerage owner, then it's a different path. You probably do need to be a broker because you got to get some reps in doing this stuff so you have credibility and you've done it before. You can't really teach what you haven't done. And so if you're going to go the brokerage owner route, you still need to get deals and do deals, but from the beginning, you got to start thinking about hiring, building a support team, building a support structure that can support multiple other business brokers that then you mentor, bring on board, train, and help buy into your brand and your systems. And so that's the other decision, is like you just have to set out from the beginning. And if you just want to be a high performance superstar out on the field, making money, having as minimal responsibilities, just go join a brokerage, because a lot of them have great teams. They have support teams, brands, and basically they'll, for an exchange for a percentage of your take when you do deals, they'll supply you with the technology, with the support team and things like that to help you. And they'll have various levels of support, but a lot of them will help you with evaluations, with the presentation creation, with sometimes they'll even have a deal closer that will help you manage the banking and legal between like LOI and closing. Those people are worth their weight in gold if they're just helping drive those deals. the project managers inside the company that are doing administrative work, which is a whole lot of the work of the deal, is like the repetitive administrative tasks. So if you're going to join a brokerage, you just want to see a good administrative team, good technology, and a good reputation and brand in the marketplace. And then you just go out and be a high performer with them. But if you want to own a business that you could one day sell, then you got to like think, I got to build a brokerage or buy a brokerage or a franchise and be part of something where I can create a system and a team that can sell businesses without me being the one that's always the one selling the business. And so those are the three decisions you have to make when you go into this space. Independent versus franchise. Generalist versus specialist. Be the broker, own the brokerage. There's millions of business owners that need help selling their businesses. This industry is not going away anytime soon. It is here to stay. There is more work to do than there are people to do it. And so I hope that if you're thinking about this, if you meet the kind of standards and requirements, and you've got the financial firepower to do this, and you're excited about this, that you'll consider taking the plunge and joining this exciting industry. However, I want to bend the conversation a little bit to viewing the future. So everything I've been talking about up to this point is kind of just how business brokerage has always been. I think the term business broker was first coined in the 60s and 70s by Tom West. I'm friends with his son, Ron West. He's still one of the most influential people in this industry. He kind of wrote the book on this space. But yeah, what Tom wrote about and how things have developed with the franchises and the IBBA and all this is not going away. Like, it's here to stay. However, there are some fast-moving, disruptive players entering this space right now I want to talk to you about. So there's a lot of other players out there that see this archaic, complicated, difficult to navigate space with tons of opportunity. I mean, I'm talking trillions of dollars of assets that need help changing hands, that have billions of dollars of potential commissions on the table. It's attracting, in the internet age, with all these young, smart people being attracted to this space and finding out the average business broker is old and doesn't know how to use technology well, and it's kind of a hard thing to navigate. People are showing up, they're raising money, and they're launching disruptive new companies into this space. Just this year, I threw my name in the hat with a whole new model, but so did about a half dozen other platform players that jumped into this space. Some of them angel-backed, some of them VC-backed, and we've all kind of created our own unique spin on how we can do business brokerage a little different and a little more tech-forward way. And that's what I was doing with Dealonomy. So after doing this for 10 years, I saw the same problems over and over so many times that I said, can we make this better? Can we make this easier to navigate for the sellers and the buyers? Can we create an offer that's so good it becomes almost irresistible? And we came up with something really unique. I raised $3 million in 2024 from some of the most influential people in this space with a clean sheet of paper approach to just, can we build a better system, a better way to buy and sell companies that makes it faster and easier and more efficient and more enjoyable for buyers and sellers. And so we just went with a whole clean sheet build. We did a major investment into a technology platform. I brought on co-founders that have more of a technology background, that have scaled large tech companies, and combined them with my brokerage, which had 10 years of deal making experience and like that in the trenches, hard fought knowledge of how to actually work with buyers and sellers and do deals. And so we married technology leaders with M&A experts, and we created Dealonomy. What we're doing is kind of a different spin, whereas every other broker out there, pretty much all the ones I mentioned, we're all competing until this year basically with the same pitch. If you ask 10 brokers, why should I use you to sell my business? They'll say some variation of, well, it's because I'm the best. And what do you charge? I charge the same as everyone else. Like, that's how most brokers work. Is you have some track record, some credibility, and you lean on that. And you say, I'm really good at my job. I'm going to do a great job for you, Mr. and Mrs. Smith. Therefore, you should pick me. And then I charge about the same as everyone else. And I realized I wanted to be more differentiated than that. And I felt like I wanted to be able to get sellers at scale, scale a company across the country that can do hundreds of transactions and maybe thousands of transactions a year. Like I said before, I get tired if I'm doing the same year over and over again. And I found myself on a plateau where I kind of reached the limits of what my small team could do unless we reinvented the whole thing. We find getting sellers is the hard part of this, and buyers are flooding into this space. And buyers accumulate too. Every time we bring a business to market, and we've done this hundreds of times, we'll get hundreds of inquiries. And those come into our CRM, and then we end up with this huge buyer database. Thousands and then tens of thousands of buyers all want to buy businesses from us. But at any given time, in my old business model, I'd only have maybe 10, 20 businesses, and you're kind of limited when you've got tens of thousands of people that want to buy businesses from you and you don't have enough inventory to feed them all. I realized I needed a better pitch for sellers. So we made it with Dealonomy to where we're the only place you can sell your business for free. Our commission is 0%. We're going to guarantee results. So we value your company up front. I'm going to give you a value range. So if I think it's going to sell between $2.5 to $3.5 million, I'll tell you that up front. And if you're ready to take offers inside that range, we're going to guarantee offers in that range in 90 days or less from our pre-screened buyer network. And if I don't deliver on that promise, I'll give you $10,000 and you can tear up our contract and go on your way. No harm, no foul. And like no other broker does that. No other broker does free, 0% commission, professional process, and a guaranteed result like that. And I knew that was going to be the key to unlocking, getting a unique, differentiated message in front of sellers at scale. So how do we make money is probably your next question. So we have buy-side fees on Dealonomy. So we've got a membership program. It's like a freemium SaaS model. So it's free to join the platform, register, build a profile, start looking at deals on Dealonomy.com. But if you upgrade your membership, which is a $99 a month membership program, you get certain advantages on the platform. The biggest one is a first mover advantage. So every time we launch a new quality vetted company through this platform, the first 10 days on the market, our premium members only have access to it. The free members are waiting till day 11. On day 11, it goes live to everyone. And so if you're a serious buyer and you see a teaser come across that's like, looks like it's right in your strike zone, exactly what you want, it's kind of a no-brainer to upgrade your membership to our premium model. And that gives us a recurring revenue stream. And so finally, I'm going to be able to build a company where I don't lose money 9 months of the year and make money on 3 months of the year. We'll be able to hopefully make money 12 months every year by having recurring revenue. And that's going to allow us to attract the best sellers with the best pitch and do it at scale on a high-tech, high-speed platform. And then we still will have a success fee that's paid at closing, but with us, the buyer's gonna pay it. So we're gonna do a little bit smaller of a success fee than is typical, but we're gonna roll it into the buyer's financing, and that's how we're gonna get paid at closing. So we'll have recurring revenue, membership, plus a reasonable success fee paid by the buyer. And when those sellers get those offers on Dealonomy, and it says, I'm offering you $3 million, guess what they get at the closing table? $3 million. They get the whole thing, because we don't take any cut from that as a platform. Sellers are really loving this pitch, obviously. It's very differentiated from all the others. I think we're going to keep taking market share over the next decade and become a pretty major player in this space. But this is a big, big world. So like most sellers will still like not know we exist. Like I said, there's millions of them. There's 3.3 million that have over 5 employees. And we can't penetrate all of that with the message of Dealonomy. So I think we're going to be a fast-moving, high-tech, high-speed player with a differentiated offer, but it's going to be still a big world where the franchise brokers, the good independent brokers, whatever path you want to go, there's ways to succeed in this space. I do want to say, if you wanted to join our firm, you can do that. So what we've done, and I alluded to this earlier when I was talking about the skill sets required to become a business broker, is we're taking more of a team approach to deals, and we're breaking the deal into stages led by different specialists, and we're working as a team on our high-tech system. And so when you work with us, like we're going to have marketers marketing. They're going to bring in leads. We're going to have business development people warming up those leads, qualifying them, and bringing them into our analysis team to value their companies. And then we'll have, the dedicated analysts that do the valuations and then turn that over. Once those valuations are done, they'll turn it over to the M&A team. And they lead the client from engagement, all the way to closing and transition period, and in a team of 3. So every time a seller signs up with us, once they engage to sell on the platform, they'll have a dedicated M&A advisor. And this is kind of the traditional business broker type of person that has that high touch, persuasive, high rapport experience skill set that's going to be able to walk them through those high emotionally charged moments. And they're going to navigate that seller relationship start to finish through the deal. But the whole time, they're going to be paired up with teammates. And in the beginning of the deal, from engagement to letter of intent, they're going to be matched up with what's called a deal manager. A deal manager is going to be a full-time staff employee that specializes in the first half of the deals. They're going to be packaging up the companies, getting them ready to sell. They're going to be screening buyers, setting meetings, like walking people through the deal room and making sure they find out who the contenders and pretenders are and match up the best possible buyers for meetings with the seller and the M&A advisor to negotiate the letter of intent. Once a letter of intent is signed on our platform, the deal manager is done and the deal closer takes over. The closer is what takes you from LOI to closing. And as long as everything goes smoothly, they do 99% of the work from here on out, and the M&A advisor just hovers over the playing field and makes sure everything's going smoothly. But the second things go off track, which they always do, some obstacle always pops up. The deal tries to die a couple times between LOI and closing. And the deal closer is just kind of cracking the whip, getting the bank to approve the financing, getting the landlord to approve the lease assignment, getting the legal teams to submit the legal docs and review them, getting the due diligence teams to finish their due diligence work. So they're kind of managing that process. But the second the deal starts to fall apart, or someone tries to change the deal or retrade it is what we call it, then the M&A advisor dons their Superman cape and jumps in and says, hey guys, whoa, time out, let's solve this problem. And they use their high people skills to manage those people and get the deal back on track and hand it back to that closer who helps get it all the way to closing. So that's what we're going to do, is we're going to have a full-on team. So we're going to be like the opposite of the franchise model. So the franchise models are a distributed network of independent businesses. Dealonomy is a centralized corporation that centralizes all of the marketing, analysis, support staff team, and then we're going to have M&A advisors scattered all around the country initially, and hopefully all around the world in the future, that are kind of the relationship people that are out there in the field navigating the relationships of the deal with a crack support staff and world-class technology behind them. What I think this is going to do that will shake up our industry is, I think for the first time ever, as we grow and scale, we're going to have a real career path for folks that don't have 18 months of savings to break into this industry as a lone wolf, full commission broker, to be able to say, hey, I can go make a real salary, make a real living being a deal manager or being a marketer or a business development person inside that Dealonomy system. And then if I learn enough and train enough, I could even graduate up to be an M&A advisor who makes the big bucks with us and navigate those deals. And I think we're going to be a first of its kind of career path for younger talent and mid-career talent that's just tired of the ups and downs, the feast and famine of the full commission situation, and wants to join like a differentiated, cutting-edge professional team that's just doing things a little bit differently. So I hope this message has been really informative for you. I hope you've learned a ton about the business brokerage industry. If there's a burning question that you have that was not covered in this video, drop it in the comments, and I'm going to try to reply to your comments and make sure we teach our hearts out here, myself and my team, so that you just know anything you need to know about business brokerage and the M&A industry. We want you to have those questions answered. Thank you very much for watching. We'll see you in the next video.